Welcome, everyone, to the Rethink It podcast, a podcast designed for equipping families and individuals struggling with brain health issues to identify practical, natural health science and lifestyle approaches to restore optimal brain health and prevent dementia. My podcast, my newsletter, my website, and my integrative practice all focus on providing down-to-earth solutions for upgrading and protecting brain health. This podcast is meant to supply women with brain fog and chronic health issues with the knowledge to choose affordable, effective tools and techniques that go beyond brain hacking. The goal is to preserve your quality of life, your health, your freedom, and your independence. I'm excited you're here today. I'm Sandy, your host for the next 30 minutes to an hour. For the next 6 months, as we try to get the word out there about this podcast content, we are offering a very special promotion. We will be doing a drawing to give away a free MRT food sensitivity test, which samples the top 88 common food sensitivities. This test has a value of $399, and we will be giving it away for free. MRT is the most advanced and reliable test for hidden inflammatory reactions to foods and food chemicals, and it identifies your best foods. So this is not an allergen test, this is a food sensitivity test. This helps you when you identify your best foods and all those hidden inflammatory reaction. It helps you make a strategic food plan in order to rapidly reduce systemic and digestive inflammation, which improves outcomes of any other digestive health program that you're currently participating in. This is something I do for a lot of my clients in order to rapidly get ahead of the inflammation that they're dealing with. For more information about the test, please go to our website, beyondbrainhealth.com, and check out the Direct to You labs. We'll also provide a link for you in the show notes, so you can check that out as well if that's an easier direction for you. But as I said above, I am excited to offer this test, this $399 test to you for free. Here's how you qualify to get it for free, okay? So I'm going to warn you, since this test is almost $400, there are a few steps you must follow to qualify for this drawing. Okay, it's a $400 test, so it's not just one step, you guys. So here we go. Go to your show notes on whatever podcaster you're listening on, whether it's Google, Apple, or Spotify. Give us a rating, good or bad. I appreciate both. And comment on the podcast. I really appreciate the honest feedback, especially as I'm growing and learning this whole podcasting education process. I want you guys to really enjoy our time together, so let me know how I'm doing. All right, step number two, you will also follow us on Instagram or Facebook, please, and give us a comment there as well. Those links should also be found on every single episode of our show notes. So you just need to open the show notes that you're listening on right now and, click the link to your Instagram or Facebook, whichever you guys prefer, social media platform that you prefer to be on, and follow us there and give us a comment. And lastly, to qualify for the drawing, please share this podcast with at least one person. Okay? So to sum up, you're giving us a rating on your favorite podcaster, whichever one you prefer. You're going to follow us on the podcast and on Instagram or Facebook, whichever you're on, and give us a comment on both. And lastly, you're going to share this content with at least one person. That's a few steps, but it shouldn't take you more than 60 seconds to complete all three. We will be doing the drawing on December 15th, 2023. So let's get the word out there. Welcome back, everyone, to the Rethink It podcast. I am so excited to be here today to continue our conversation about brain health protection and longevity. Our podcast today is called the Hormone Episode, Rethinking the Connection Between Hormones and Brain Health. I am so excited to share this episode with you today. We have a great guest today. Her name is Meg Richichi, and she and I are just best buddies. Okay, you guys, she's one of my favorite people. Meg and I got connected in a professional business mentorship program last year, and I'm so glad she's a part of my life. I'm a person who sees my profession as a holistic health practitioner as more than a job, but as also a passion. So it's easy for me to find that I can be a little single-minded. If I'm not careful, I can find that all I want to do is talk about, read about, and think about the science and art behind healing. So luckily, when you have a friend like Meg, I can grab my cup of tea, like I'm doing right now, sit outside, which I'm not doing, and chat with someone who gets me in this regard and is as excited as I am about it. You guys, just before we started recording, we literally just talked and talked and talked about the things we were going to talk about because it was fun. So Meg is my go-to mentor and resource when it comes to all things female hormones because she is a repository of information and expertise and experience in this area. She's an integrative women's health practitioner with nearly 30 years of clinical expertise. She practiced in New York City for 2 decades and currently resides in Atlanta while she's providing telehealth services for women around the country. Meg uses a unique kind of East meets West approach to help countless women, and she has done so for many years. She's used this approach to help women overcome hormone imbalances, including for infertility, PCOS, PMS, weight issues, digestive disorders, anxiety, and depression. Meg began her career in health and wellness as an acupuncturist with training in traditional Chinese medicine. She hosts her own podcast, the Hormone Lifestyle Zone, which, guys, I encourage you really to check it out. With that, I would love to let Meg share some of her story. Meg, you are a real Renaissance woman. And you started out, I think, in graphic artists, right? I think as a graphic artist.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so delighted. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I have to tell the audience, Sandy is one of my favorite people. We literally, should we let them know? We talk like 2 to 3 times a day.
We do. We're bouncing ideas off each other all the time.
Yeah, we bounce ideas off of one another. I'll call Sandy with questions about clients, and we just banter back and forth. We're very geeky and really passionate about health. I'm very passionate about women's health.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did. I started out as a creative director and art director. And by my early 30s, and I'll give a little background, I had an eating disorder in my teens and my 20s. And by my later 20s, I started dealing with anorexia and bulimia. And I was very fortunate. This is going back to the early 80s. I had the most amazing functional medicine doc. He was just like cutting edge.
Wow. And that's like a diamond in the rough, like in the 80s. Seriously.
Yes. It was amazing. And he teamed me up with a good nutritionist. I actually went for colonics.
Wow.
And I went
seriously ahead of the game here.
I had a really good therapist. So I had a team of people that didn't want to fix me. They wanted to heal me from the inside out. And it had a really profound effect on me because I realized that my relationship with food was everything in my healing process. So
do you consider this as like the launch pad for you, how you got started and how you got into functional health? How did you really get into that whole?
Well, I'll lead. So what happened because of that, in my early 30s and by my mid 30s, I got really clear that I wanted to do something in health. And I knew by my early 30s and my healing process, that was part of it. So I decided to go to school for acupuncture. I was seeing an acupuncturist and I picked up a book. And after 2 paragraphs, I knew this was it. Went to school for acupuncture. I was in practice for about 5 years. And I was getting a lot of referrals from people in the fitness industry and a lot of dance companies. My partner that I had been with at the time was a dancer. So all her dancer friends, and I'd get people in modern dance and on Broadway, and a lot of fitness people were sending clients to me. Mm-hmm. And I started seeing a lot of women with fertility issues. So acupuncture was really helpful in the process, but I started noticing a pattern with women that had non-related fertility issues and women that were struggling with trying to get pregnant. But they all both shared the same lifestyle markers: eating on the go, skipping meals, had gut issues, sleep issues, stress. And the list goes on. And I knew if these women with non-related fertility issues didn't start making lifestyle changes, that they would be back in my office. But what it made me realize, I needed to take a deeper dive into nutrition and hormones and functional medicine, because that was my healing process.
That's amazing.
And I loved acupuncture. I've retired from that, but still keep up my license and my board certification. But I always think in terms of Chinese medicine energetics with a Western functional medicine.
Sure. I think you have to. I think I found that since my training was in medicine and completely Western thinking of health, that as I've studied functional health, which, there's a good bit of push for primary care providers to get some functional medicine training, I feel like it's still limited because the mindset's still very Western. And I found that as I've really worked with complicated clients, I've had to learn the Eastern approaches. I've had to learn some traditional Chinese concepts. I've definitely had to learn energetics. I mean, it's just, it is much more holistic if we're dealing with the whole body, not just the pieces that are broken,
That's true. You don't want to deal. And it's, root cause resolution, which we talk about in functional medicine. That term is from Chinese medicine. Always looking for the root causes. And they've been doing this for like thousands of years.
That's the thing that just blows my mind, because when I dove into the Chinese medicine, everything I'm reading, I'm like, this was written thousands of years ago. Yeah. And these people are spot on.
Still spot on today.
Every client, about every situation. I'm like, this is incredible. So it's just really validating.
But the only difference now, and we're going to touch on this with cognitive issues and brain fog, is that we are just being so bombarded by environmental toxins. Yeah. And we didn't have that even 100 years ago to the degree that we have today. And this is as having such an influence on women's hormones.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on the podcast. It's because it's absolutely clear in my practice that when I'm working with women in particular who are struggling with brain fog, hormones is almost always a component that I have had to address, or I have to address at some point. What do you see as the biggest way that hormone imbalances lead to brain fog? I mean, my mother-in-law, that was the classic. I shared that in a previous podcast. That was an issue for her. Her estrogen was declining in her menopause, and she was getting, quote, brain farts, and I know that's menopause. It's an obvious one, but what about you? What do you see with, I think it surprised you because I was like, can't you talk about hormone imbalances and brain fog? She's like, I don't do that. I'm like, yeah, you do. We talk about brain fog all the time.
But brain fog is a symptom. So what I look at, with women's hormones is that one of the biggest issues for brain fog is hormone imbalance. It's a symptom of hormone imbalance. And because our hormone imbalances, it's the body's, when hormones are out of balance. So if a woman is having brain fog or brain farts or cognitive issues, or if she's feeling anxious or depression or gas or bloat, or she's having tender breast, this is the body's way of telling us something is out of balance. And something's out of balance, something's out of alignment. And it's kind of like a car. When the light comes on in the car, it's like, oh, I got to go to Joey the auto mechanic. Something's amiss. It's your body's way of saying, hey, please pay attention. Yeah. Because what you and I had said earlier before we got on the podcast, when people are having having brain fog, and I see it in teenagers. I see it in women in their 20s and their 30s. You see it a lot in the later 30s, the 40s and 50s, the perimenopause and menopause.
Right.
If these underlying issues, which we'll go into, that is causing hormonal imbalances, that's showing a symptom of brain fog, if they are not addressed, then that woman is at higher risk for dementia and Alzheimer's.
100%.
You're getting the early, I know you know this, but it's so important to share.
Yeah.
You're getting the early warning signs of what could potentially happen
Yeah.
if we don't balance your hormones.
Yeah.
And we're going to go into what are the underlying causes? How do we get to the root causes? I get really geeky and passionate about this because when you see women's lives change, when you see someone who comes to you crying, going, I am so forgetful. I don't even know what I'm doing. I can't remember anything. And then you look at the underlying issues and, we'll go out. I want to go into that with you.
Oh, yeah. I definitely want to dig.
But I do want to say what I look at when I'm looking at cognitive issues, I'm looking at the thyroid and I'm going to jump a little into it. I look at hyper and hypothyroid. I also, I look at estrogen and progesterone, how they come into play. And I also look at how well are women detoxing estrogens.
Yes. Yep.
Are they circulating dirty estrogens? Are we not excreting them out through the bowels? So what's the dance causing all of this? And
so that's an important point. And there's two things I want to say. One is, of course, that, as we make our estrogen plays its role in this cell. Just for basic foundational understanding for our audience, it's used in the cell, then it leaves the cell, and it's supposed to be cleared and broken down in the liver and then remove those byproducts. The broken down estrogen is what's supposed to be excreted into your bile and then into your digestive system. But the problem is when the liver is unable to do that, which is becoming a more and more significant issue because of the onslaught of toxicity in our environment, then we end up breaking them down partially, and we recirculate those metabolites, those partial broken down estrogens, which then go back and try to sit on receptors and do their job, which that leads to things like cancer. So that's why we care about that. The other thing I wanted to say that was really that you made a good point about, you were talking about how in the lifespan of, estrogen, a brain fog or hormone disruption early on that can lead to major issues later on in life. The thing I always point out, it doesn't matter who I'm really working with. I had a client who had multiple concussions and was like, I'm doing fine. He was functional. And I said, look, there's a saying in medicine, and this is accurate and especially important. This is where medicine, shines, is in strokes. Okay, if we have a stroke, an active stroke, we actually say, time is brain. Okay, time is brain. So we start the timer. We start paying attention. How quick can we intervene on this stroke? That's actively happening right now. We have got to get the stroke resolved. With whatever kind of intervention we're doing. But it's the same thing when it comes to hormones or concussions or whatever. Time is brain. So you don't want to if you're starting to have brain fog issues at 20, believe me, that's going to affect your brain. Time is brain. So anyway, that's my only point I wanted to drive on.
So what? Yeah, and also, I want to go into. I'll go into some of these factors. What I look at to a few things, and I'm going to make some recommendations on what women can do to help clear those dirty estrogens, or make sure that they're not recirculating estrogens that should be kind of eliminated through the bowels. Is that when I do stool testing, I look at an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase. And if I see an elevation of that enzyme in the bowels, that's why I do stool testing.
Yes, test.
They're
test,
not
don't guess.
I had a client about a year and a half ago, and she came to see me, and she had a series of miscarriages. She had thyroid issues and constipation, and her mother died of breast cancer.
Oh, geez.
And it wasn't a BRCA issue. So her test came back. She had liver flukes, and she had beta-glucuronidase enzyme through the roof. It was triple what it should have been. So addressing parasites, driving down that beta-glucuronidase, and balancing her hormones. Guess what? She got pregnant naturally.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Like, literally ready to give birth.
Yeah.
So it's super profound.
Yeah.
And I can to do testing with people. But what I find is a big a big force or really that what drives hormone imbalance. Stress is the driving force behind most women's hormonal imbalances and health challenges. And cortisol is the main stress hormone, which has such influence on estrogen and testosterone, progesterone, and thyroid. So if I can just give a little dance of the hormones, because I think it's kind of...
Oh, absolutely. We were just talking about this before our episode, how, she literally touched on the three main, triggers: the environmental, and then just the hormonal, and then the stress. Because last year, she was sharing how last year she was dealing with residual COVID exposure and COVID, the effects of
I had
COVID
long
on the
hauler.
brain. Yeah. And mold. And then we were both in a very intensive business training course. So
very
that
stressful.
was pushing us outside of our limits of understanding or what comfort zone for sure. So the stress was very high. And so she was experiencing a lot of brain fog issues. That's what she was sharing, what Meg was sharing with me before we even started talking. So I'm going to let that be our segue into the stress and how the hormone balance the dance that she wants to talk about here.
So, and I will just say a very quick story about myself. I had gotten COVID. I lived in Charleston, and I lived in 3 places, and all 3 places had mold. Couldn't get away from mold. That's why they call it low country. It's very low. It's high moisture. Mm-hmm. So when I came to Atlanta is when I started to really work on clearing the mold and a variety of issues. And I am happy to say I am sharp as a tack.
Yes, you are.
It was kind of scary because
we had to do a couple of things though, didn't we? I mean, we had to do some energetic work and
clearing. And I mean, I did things like put dish towel in the freezer. And I put this is true, and put my work journal in a drawer in the kitchen. And I was like, oh, mother of God, what is going on with my brain?
Right.
So, but the good news is you can turn this around. So, getting back to stress. So let's talk about the dance of hormones. The first half of a woman's cycle is about estrogen and progesterone leading up to a woman ovulating. Mm-hmm. I love this time of month. It is about creativity. It's about the potential of a child, but it's also the potential about what are you going to give birth to in the world. So you get this beautiful rise in your testosterone and estrogen.
And your energy, right? Your energy goes up then too, right?
Your energy goes up, and because it's motivational. Uh-huh. Those hormones are motivational. Literally.
Does that improve your clear thinking and problem?
If you're clearing estrogens, if your hormones are balanced. So if your hormones are balanced, I'll continue. Yeah. So estrogen is very dramatic. She likes things to grow. She's very kind of like me. Dramatic, but I love what I do because she loves things to grow. She likes babies to grow, but she also likes fibroids and estrogen and other things to grow. Mm-hmm. We like to keep her in check. She's a beautiful hormone. She's what gives us our je ne sais quoi. You look at progesterone. Progesterone is a very balancing hormone. It's very soothing. It impacts cognitive function and the production of GABA and serotonin. It's very grounding. It keeps you rooted.
It tames down the flamboyant girl.
The little girl. Yeah. I call progesterone the designated driver. Keeps her in check. We love estrogen. She's beautiful, but you have to keep her in check. So what happens when we're under stress? Progesterone is a precursor to cortisol and can also compete with cortisol. It gets shunted down stress pathways away from your cycle. So what does that mean? You start showing a state of what's called estrogen dominance because that estrogen's being shunted away. So the progesterone is being shunted. So what happens is you start seeing symptoms of when your period, and a variety of factors cause that fall under the umbrella of stress, which is your diet and your gut. But the point being, you start having symptoms: breast tenderness, weight gain, bloat, brain fog. You could have symptoms of fibroids, anxiety. So
Cysts on your ovaries.
Cyst on your ovaries, depression, infertility, PCOS. So it goes on. PCOS is a little different because you're not ovulating. That's a different state of estrogen dominance. Your body's wanting to ovulate. It isn't. But the point is, how are we treating this for women? We're putting them on birth control. You're not deficient in birth control. We need to figure out how is stress and the different things that fall under the umbrella of stress, which I want to go into in a moment, are giving you these symptoms, which include brain fog.
100%.
Do you say so? So nobody just has brain fog by itself.
No,
there are other influencing factors that are stressors on the body.
100%.
And modern day stress, I say to women, has either become an unintentional form of birth control or the worst endocrine disruptor.
Right. So interesting. Yeah. Right? That's so true. We literally, it was one thing to say I run the rat race and I'm running from client or appointment to appointment or whatever, work to work. It's a whole different thing. And today, because even in the times where we might be quiet, we have our phones. And here we are scrolling reels or reading, nonsense or stressors, news, that's literally going to stress us out. So we literally don't take the quiet that God intended us to have to rest and reset and drive, our stress levels down and our cortisol down and just bring that balance back into our life. There's just never any moment. And even I feel like people literally run from the moment they get up, starting watching their phones or reading the news through their job, through their day, eating really quick, standing up, back home, rush through dinner, maybe if they're lucky. If they're a boss babe, they're over there at 5 a.m. like me, working out at 5 a.m., right? And so they're driving the stress up in the morning, and then they collapse in their bed with their phone in their hand.
Yeah, I know.
I can say a lot about that, but I'm just focused on the stress right now. There's just no rest, and then they sleep for 6 hours. So,
do you want to hear something interesting? 75% of women have estrogen dominance.
Holy cow!
From teenagers to postmenopause. So, do
you think the ages are getting younger and younger? Is that what you see in your class?
Yeah, now we're seeing that women are starting to experience, and I see it in my practice, symptoms of hot flashes and night sweats at 35. So So, what we're looking at here is that, oh my God, where do we start? The big stressors, what I look at is how a woman is eating, when she's eating. Big win that people can take a look at is look at your sleep. And I'm going to bring up sleep because this is something that is
Please talk about sleep.
Let's talk sleep first, because when I look over people's intake forms, I really, and Cindy knows this, you do too, extensive intake forms. I look at how much sleep someone's getting, how much water they're drinking, how much alcohol they're drinking. We're going to talk about a study that just came out a few months ago about alcohol.
That turned the mainstream thought on its head.
People are going to hate me by the end of your show or love me like, I didn't know these things. So, you want to look at sleep deprivation. Your brain has to detox at night. You wake up in the morning after 5-6 hours of sleep and your brain is foggy. But I look at a 3-day food journal, tells me an incredible story about how someone is eating. A lot of women now are doing this quote unquote intermittent fasting. And I'm not downing fasting. I think intermittent fasting, when it's done correctly, can be really beneficial.
Yeah, and I want to just want to pause really quick on that point because I want to drive something home on that. Women are different. Like they have different needs. So when you're fasting as a woman, you have you have to do a very specific way because your adrenals are responsible for making hormones. Like this is a really important point. So elaborate on that. You were getting
women of reproductive age have to really monitor their blood sugar and insulin levels because they bounce off of one another.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a time to be restricting the amount of time you're eating your meals. I mean, some of these programs, or I just had someone the other day, she was getting all her meals in like 6 hours. Her hormones were all over the place. And she was only eating 2 meals. She wasn't even getting up. Calorically, she wasn't meeting her body's needs. When I work with women, some people may disagree. Ideally, if you could hit the sweet spot of getting all your meals in 10 hours, that's awesome. If you have to do it in 12, you do it in 12, but you need that break.
Yeah.
And what I also try to do with women when they eat, and we'll go through this later, I want you to have a solid breakfast, a solid lunch, solid dinner.
Yeah.
You don't need to do all this snacking. And I'll talk to women about that. But that's a big deal.
Yeah, that is a good segue. I was gonna ask us to kind of dive into diet for a minute. Let's dive into diet. What's the best? What do you think the best way to support your hormones? I know the answer. Tell our audience.
I had this discussion with my good friend Amber Goppert. She's like she has a
fitness
gym. It's called the Training Room, and she's a fitness expert. And we're all about protein. And it's all about protein and fat. So what I recommend for all women, if you really want to rock your hormones, if you want to have stable blood sugar, if you want to be healthy, lean, healthy body fat, if you want to minimize any belly fat, because that's a sign of elevated cortisol and your blood sugar's off. Each meal, I would like you to aim for 35 to 45 grams of protein with breakfast, 35 to 45 with lunch, 35 to 45, and sometimes more with dinner.
40 grams of protein, people,
so
at every meal.
It looks like the size of the palm of your hand, the whole palm, not the little bit. So that's about 5 or 6 ounces of protein. And many of you are thinking, oh my God, how the hell do I do that? Lean protein, branched chain amino acids, healthy fats, omega-3s, important for the building blocks of your hormones. So
would you suggest a protein shake?
I'm going to go through what I like people to eat food. And, some people are crazy. They're like, I can't do it. I would get a very, very organic, grass-fed or rice pea, really good protein shake. I mean, I'm not, I love Total Vegan by Numedica. Metagenics makes some great ones, but I'm going to add something to this. I also say, aside from that shake, which is, I'm going to say Numedica and Designs for Health, there's some really good companies that make great shakes. They're about 26 grams of protein. You need an additional 20 grams. So what does that look like? Add 3 ounces of, you could do bacon. We've demonized bacon. Make it grass-fed bacon. It's fine. But you have to look at how much protein is in the bacon. You could do turkey sausage. Could do, what are some other yummy?
I'm only going to put a caveat in here because I know a lot of people in my audience have Lyme disease or something. So I know that a lot of my Lyme patients or clients can't tolerate, they really cannot tolerate pork. Or even beef. So in that alternative world, what I tend to recommend there are lamb, that's chicken. Lamb and chicken, turkey also.
Or some, if they want wild salmon. Or here's another one.
Even goat meat, which is not as common. Yeah.
Or in my world, so this is what a meal, in my world, breakfast, lunch, and dinner is the same meal. And I say to people, I do not care if you have, stew for breakfast with greens, because breakfast is a meal we miss. We're breaking a fast. So a lot of times when people are getting that brain fog, they're feeling cranky mid-morning, mid-afternoon, they're going for sugar. They eat enough protein for breakfast.
And I also I want to point out that if you break your fast with a high carb diet or high carb meal, you really stimulate a lot of changes in the insulin and glucose and the glucagon pathways, which actually drives that instability in your sugar. It makes fat storage kick on, like you're going to start storing fat, and that surge in surge in your insulin and glucose, it really is inflammatory, and it will stimulate cortisol release because of the inflammatory response. Yeah. So
and it impacts your progesterone.
Right. So her point here and the protein is really something that you really kind of want to keep in mind, and to minimize carbs. That's really hard for me because I'm German and we eat bread for breakfast. Bread and eggs. So just getting that ratio right. It's not you can't not eat bread, but
well, I have a different right. I feel that women and men for that matter that have autoimmune issues, and I also look at their stool test, we don't do well with gluten.
Yeah,
we don't have the enzymes to break it down. And
yes,
but that's
a different
that's another story.
Yeah.
But insulin is a fat storage hormone. So when people are trying to lean out, the carbs that I like are, or look at sweet potatoes, look at yams. You can even do white potatoes with the skin, yuca, beets,
yuca,
brown rice, quinoa. I mean, I don't mind, getting some grain in there. I usually say to people, like about a half a cup. If it's a starchy veggie, 3/4 of a cup, having 5-6 ounces of meat, 2 to 3 cups of greens. Because I work with a lot of people with chronic illness, a lot of people as Sandy, they've been to 5, 6, 7 different doctors before they land in my office. So I don't want to, it's not that I'm restricting people. I just want them to start. I want all of us. This is the way we used to eat. This is the way our great grandparents ate. They didn't eat processed food. As I said, 75% of women have estrogen dominance. That means 75% of women at least have PMS.
That's a lot.
And we're using a birth control pill for so many women to address the symptom. We want to look at someone's diet.
I had hot flashes in my 20s.
Oh, Lord, girl.
In my 20s. I remember my husband's like, gosh, menopause is going to stink. Like, you're 24 years old and you're throwing the sheets off and turning the AC down to 60. And I never, and I had the PCOS symptoms. I had the acne, I had the skin conditions, I had the things that I didn't know. And this was, right out of PA school, and having studied all that, I still didn't connect any dots. I just thought that was how I was made. My mom had hot flashes, I'm just a hot-natured person. And I guess I am a hot-natured person, and I do prefer the cold. But since, balancing my hormones, getting out my breast implants and all those things, I used to get a hot flash after every time I drank a glass of wine. Every time. Now I can enjoy a glass of wine with my meal and not be hot flashing every, 5 seconds.
So can we talk a little about alcohol, since you just brought it up?
Yeah, let's bring it up.
So there, I think it was a JAMA study, actually came out. This is so funny. It came out in January. I think they did it intentionally after the new year.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I didn't.
So this showed that the risk of death was found to be greater for women by let's put it by 61% the risk of death was found to be greater for women. Basically, I'm going to make it simple. Drinking alcohol is not healthy.
No, it's not.
Sadly.
It's logical. Here's what the narrative was.
But I also want to say, if I can,
go ahead.
I don't want this to be an all or nothing.
No.
I think if somebody has a glass of wine,
a
couple times a week, I'm going to be brutally honest. You can't have everybody stop everything.
No.
If you're doing everything else, because they're basically saying, and I do say this to women, when women drink more than one drink of alcohol or a glass of wine, this is disrupting you detoxing estrogen. It's 100%. Disrupting those estrogen, those detox pathways.
Right.
And that can, I've had clients 2 to 4 drinks, you're putting yourself at greater risk for estrogen related issues.
So the study basically showed a higher risk of early death and dementia. Is that what it was? Yeah. You know, this podcast is called Rethink It because it's a play on words, of course. You know, this is a brain health focused podcast, so we're thinking about the brain. But I'm also trying to get people to rethink what they understand as their narrative, and you know, that narrative about alcohol, especially red wine. I think that was the big one. Red wine. Everybody should drink a glass of red wine every day because of the resveratrol, right? The resveratrol in the red wine is an antioxidant. Well, that's great, except that we're using alcohol as our delivery system for resveratrol. So alcohol is a oxidant. It's a poison. I'm sorry, it is. It's going to inhibit the enzymes in the liver. It's going to disrupt all the detox, like she said, pathways of the liver. It is an oxidant. So yes, you're getting an antioxidant with your oxidant, you know. So how is that helping your brain? It's not. And that was a narrative like that was really promoted. I mean, I think my doctor told me that. Like, you know, that was, I mean, if we could pull it back, doctors also suggested we smoke tobacco back in the 1950s.
So many of these studies were backed by, you know, the alcohol industry.
Right.
But, you know, again, and I really do, hey, listen, Jesus had a glass of wine. So it's about moderation. It's about supporting the body in because I find whether it's, we want to find balance in our lives and how we manage it.
You know, the reality is when you have the knowledge about what we're doing, okay, it's informed consent. Every bit of it, like, okay, I'm going to drink some wine. Well, I know that this is going to do X, Y, and Z to my body. So now I'm going to just support what I'm choosing, what I would like to enjoy. And I'm going to support my body in its process of recovering from what I've chosen to expose it to in order to preserve my brain and those types of things.
And I will say this, when I'm dealing with, Sandy, you know, it really just hit me a little earlier. I would say 90% of the women that come to see me from the age of 16, 18 to 70s all have cognitive issues marked on their intake forms.
Yeah.
To some degree. Just hit me. And I went, oh my God. Now it may be to a lesser degree than someone else, but they're all marking that section.
Right.
That's kind of scary. But again, and I want to reiterate this, there are things that you can do, but we're also seeing more of how our lifestyle is impacting our brain function. So if I can, at this point, you know, bring in some foods that people can.
Yeah, we're still on the diet conversation. Oh, cool. Keep it up. Yay. Keep it up. Bring it on.
Essential fatty acids, omega-3s, they cross the blood-brain barrier. Mm-hmm. Your brain loves them. Mm-hmm. Your brain loves DHA. Fish.
Do you look for a specific type of ratio in your DHA or?
Well, I mean, the one that I love. I mean, I could go grab it. I don't know the ratio specifically, but
do you like cod liver? Or
I do fish oils, and I'm just going to say because these are brands I use, and people can do whatever they want, and they can look at the ratio. I love Metagenics makes. What is it? EPA Omegagenics EPA DHA 1000.
Yeah, that's
and it's a gram, and it is clean, and it doesn't make people burp. And I recommend to most of my clients 1-3 times daily. We need that. We need that. That's important.
Right.
And sadly, our fish is, oh God, the amount of plastics in our ocean and mercury. And I don't want to, it's good to eat some wild salmon. It's good to eat cold water fish. I think sardines are great, but we want to watch the tuna.
Again, again,
it's heavy metal.
It's those things, again, knowledge. That's it. Just knowledge and power. Yeah. It's empowerment. You can get down to this place where you're like, I can't eat anything. I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything because everything's poison. But no, you just have to recognize where your source is. Like if you are constantly bombarded. Now, if you're the person who's eating out of canned foods most of the time and on the go, let's start there. But if you are, I do eat fish and I I do eat pretty well, well, how high is your consumption of fish? And if it is high, do we need to maybe clean some of the debris that you might be being exposed to with your
Right.
fish intake and that kind of thing? So, that's the point. And I just want to drive that point home that, we are, as holistic practitioner, it can be very frustrating as we read these studies, as we see where the exposure is. You're like, gosh, I just want to live in a bubble, But no, the goal is really to optimize the way your physiology is meant to work, and then give you the tools so when you go through life and well, I just traveled to Taiwan and I ate nothing but fish. Well, you probably had some exposure to parasites and metals, So now what am I going to do? I'm going to address those parasites. I'm going to clean up those heavy metals. I'm going to sort of do some proactive
binders.
work. Yeah, to address that and then move on with my life. It's not, you can't hide in a bubble. Sorry, I just had to do that little tangent there because it can be very frustrating for people.
So what I feel is very helpful for women, because the issue for us women, when we look at estrogen dominance, there's an excess of estrogen in the system. So what are things that contribute to that? Environmental toxins, plastics, cosmetics, or what are the leading causes of hormonal issues with teenagers? Anything you put on your face, you're going to be absorbing into your bloodstream.
100%.
So, that's why I say to people, and a lot of women, they don't know, don't put things in, maybe your audience does, but I'm going to say, store your stuff in glass.
Yep.
Don't drink out of, minimize plastic bottles. Hey, listen, sometimes we're out in the go. We need water. I'd rather you stay hydrated. Hydration is very important.
Yeah. But buy yourself a Hydro Flask or something like it, some spinoff of it, and have a steel glass.
And sometimes in life, you don't have one with you. And that happens to me. Again, I get it. You have to do the best you can in any situation.
Right.
So,
but knowledge is power. Knowledge is power.
Yes, it is. So what I say to women, one of the, what helps us clear estrogens are cruciferous veggies. And things like broccoli and Brussels sprouts and cabbage and bok choy. But what is a really, really good way to do through food is broccoli sprouts. Broccoli sprouts are high in sulforaphane.
And the nutrient dense, the density in the sprouts is so high compared to the actual grown plant. It's impressive.
So sulforaphane helps promote detoxification and removal of excess or unsafe forms of estrogens, those dirty estrogens, by supporting the liver and eliminating them through the bowels. So it's a natural blocker of bad estrogens. And again, it parks itself on estrogen receptor sites and stops the bad estrogens by inhibiting malignant tissue, like on breast cancer.
Exactly.
And holy crud.
Right.
So it's so there's a few things. Hey, if you ever thought of growing something, grow broccoli sprouts.
Yeah. And they're not hard to do.
My recommendation to people, if you're really having issues where you really want to be able to open up those pathways, I would tell you to take some sulforaphane from 300 to 600 milligrams. It really works. But broccoli sprouts are great. And having cruciferous vegetables are really, really important in one's diet.
Just this nerdy science side, in case anybody's familiar with the buzzword of glutathione, and there's all these IV clinics giving glutathione treatments, and so glutathione is something that maybe most people have heard about, and if not, then let me introduce you. Glutathione is a master antioxidant that the liver does to kind of clean up toxins. But what sulforaphane does is it donates a sulfa ion to help produce glutathione in the liver. So it's necessary for the normal production of glutathione that your body makes. If you don't have enough sulfa, then you aren't going to create enough glutathione. You're going to have a deficiency in it. So
that's thank you for bringing that.
Nerdy,
that's a really juicy, gemmy. No, that's important.
Yeah.
Our bodies are designed to thrive.
Right.
And nature has provided us with so much. But we live in a world right now where vinyl floors, I mean, those little air fresheners that you plug in, all these little things can mimic xenoestrogen and just start landing on estrogen receptor sites and be triggers of some really funky autoimmune issues and cancers. There's one other thing that I wanted to bring up that I thought was really important. DIM. I think a lot of women have heard of DIM. DIM is it comes, you get it in it's conversion of endol-3 carbinol to DIM in broccoli and Brussels sprouts and cauliflower, but you'd have to eat a lot of it.
Yeah,
and
you
I'm
do.
encouraging people to eat it.
Yeah.
All you need is 100 milligrams a day, because what it does, DIM supports estrogen balance by increasing the beneficial 2-hydroxyestrogens. Those are the good ones.
Yeah, the good ones.
Reducing the unwanted 16-hydroxy variety. Those are the ones that cause cancer and create a lot of problems in the body. So this improves your estrogen metabolism and helps resolve, so many forms of estrogen dominance. All you got to do is, if I can eat a lot of cruciferous cooked veggies, 100 milligrams of DIM, sulforaphane. You could do the broccoli sprouts if you want to. I myself take 600 milligrams of sulforaphane because it's also good for your brain, your cognitive function. I give that's what I wanted to also bring up. And fish oils are really important.
Right.
A good multivitamin with minerals.
Sure.
3 plays an important role. I always say to people, please get your D checked, because it's
a hormone.
By knowing the exact number, I have clients going, I take 2,000 daily. Well, what's your D? And their doctors are not checking. So optimal levels are between 60 and 80. And I think I said magnesium. Magnesium is.
Oh, you have to have it.
Oh, do you know what I wanted to share? When we eat processed foods, we deplete the body of magnesium.
Yes, we deplete our body of magnesium.
Many things.
For sure. We could a whole podcast on that. But the reality is under stress. Now think of stress a little differently than you might just pop into your brain. If when I say I'm stressed, it might be an episodic, I'm stressed because I'm having a fight with my husband, or, it's been really bad at work and I just can't get these deadlines, blah, blah, blah. That's typically what pops into our minds. But I think of stress as a practitioner slightly differently. I think of stress in kind of the chronic sense of the body responding in the cortisol drive, right? So what Meg talked about earlier here, when our bodies are under a significant amount of physiological stress, of course the episodics will drive it higher. But if you're dealing with estrogen dominance, let's just stick with the hormones for now. And the body's going, okay, we're out of balance here metabolically. I'm stressed, and the cortisol's rising. Your body, the metabolic rate goes up on the cellular level to try to manage that and bring everything back in balance. And what is needed for that is magnesium. So in periods of episodic high potency stress, if you're already low because you've been in this chronic state of stress, you're not going to recover very well. You're going to have significant side effects in your health with these episodic, periods, moments of stress. And so magnesium, I feel like, is one of those baseline things that every single chronic health problem person needs to be supporting. So just that was my FYI to add in there.
And that, since you brought up magnesium, and I want to tie it into digestion, a big issue for women with estrogen dominance and hormonal issues, it's always the gut. 99.9% of the women that come into see
Great transition. I was going to say,
gut issues. And what I see a lot, predominantly constipation.
Yes.
Magnesium, and I'll just tie in a little. Magnesium citrate is, if you're going to take magnesium citrate is good with constipation. Magnesium glycinate, I give that to clients when they don't. But the point being, you've got to clean up the gut. Because the gut is making sure people are digesting. I see a lot of gas and bloat. So hydrochloric, I mean, we could do a whole thing, but making sure you're digesting your food. And I say to people, whether you work with Sandy or myself or someone else, if you go to someone and they are not paying attention to your gut and making sure that you are having 2 to 3 bowel movements a day, you don't want to work with them.
Yeah, I set that foundation.
But I see this all the time.
I set that foundation on the podcast 2 podcasts ago that we recorded. So if you haven't listened to that one, be sure to tune back into that. Just talks about the connection with the gut and the brain. So it's very focused on that and kind of gives you some of the research behind why a healthy gut is so important for a healthy brain. But part of that picture is because of its involvement and how it manages and it clears and it metabolizes hormones, and even in some of the production of enzymes that are necessary for conversion of things like thyroxine, thyroid hormones.
Thyroid conversion, yes.
Yeah. So this is a really important topic. What do you see as like the major in your practice? I know you've worked with a lot of PCOS and infertility and this kind of thing. Like, what do you see as the main issue that keeps coming up in that population with hormones and gut?
I would say that 99% of the women that come to see me have gut issues. Mm-hmm. The majority of them are constipated. Mm-hmm. Constipation to me is going 1 time or less. Mm-hmm. I always
a day.
We're supposed to be having long, solid bowel movements 2 to 3 times daily, mm-hmm. not loose stool. Loose stool, you're losing, a lot of minerals and nutrients. What was that? Oh, I see a lot of constipation. I see loose stool. Rarely do I see people having regular bowel movements. Isn't that wild?
No,
like
yes.
1 a day. Mm-hmm. I also see, and I do a lot of testing, I know that if I see a lot of parasites, mm-hmm. I see I do testing. I see a lot of mold and environmental toxins. Women with PCOS, and I just don't think it's PCOS. Mm-hmm. A lot of women have a very difficult time clearing heavy metals and environmental chemicals. Mm-hmm. So by doing testing for that, it's urine testing, I can see where those levels are, and then I can really hone in on how I want to clear that.
Exactly.
But regarding the gut, I really believe that a lot of women are deficient in hydrochloric acid.
Right. So it's the opposite. We're not, we shouldn't be taking a anti-reflux medication over here suppressing acid. If you have reflux, it's very likely that you actually are low in stomach acid, right?
Because your LES valve is like, you have you eat some food, drops in the belly, mm-hmm. and then your stomach lining starts producing hydrochloric acid. Mm-hmm. And then the LES valve, which is between the esophagus and the stomach, goes, oh, we're going to close now.
Right.
But if your body's not producing your stomach enough hydrochloric acid, that valve stays open. Mm-hmm. Also, low vitamin D impacts mm-hmm. that valve. Mm-hmm. So one thing, I think I said this to you, hydrochloric acid, why is it so important? Helps you digest your food. But if you eat something mm-hmm. that is contaminated, it can actually keep you from getting food poisoning. HCl kills bacteria, microbes. So when I'm getting people, and I've been seeing this recently, Sandy, mm-hmm. hospitalized for diarrhea, the docs do all these stool tests and they come to me, and they have all this other stuff going on. They have no stomach acid. Yeah. And they've been on proton pump inhibitors.
Protonics, we'll put you on a drip for Protonics, and we'll give you some antibiotics for your H. pylori. And so instead, in the holistic world, we might actually support HCl production while giving you probiotics or something that targets the H. pylori, a lot more naturally without disrupting the biofilms of healthy bacteria that you need, right? Because that's the important element right there. Good point. Great talk there. The first thing I always do with all my clients, I want to make sure you're digesting your food mm-hmm. and you have regular bowel movements. If you are constipated, I can't start detoxing. Mm-hmm. And I've had a lot of clients that have been to other practitioners, and I went, you're going to the bathroom once every 3 days. Mm-hmm.
you can't detox. That's why you were feeling so
Here's
ill.
a little nugget. And it's worth mentioning, I think, more to Americans than it is to, say, the French or people who really savor their food. But, digestion starts in the mouth. And I think that we, again, this fast-paced society, we fall, we don't take any time, much less time to eat. Are you eating standing up? Probably. I did before coming down here, sorry. But, but I still chewed my food. And that's the point I'm getting ready to make. Chewing your food is the first step in digestion, and it is actually a trigger to stimulate production in the HCl in the stomach early on before the food even gets there. I mean, really chewing your food. Chew till it's back down to mush. That's how you're supposed to eat. And that's just like a weird little aside, but I'm finding that's a very common and missed thing. I don't know why,
Here's another one that I say to clients. If which all of us do, including moi, I'm sure you've done it too.
Yeah.
You eat your lunch or your meal in front of your computer because you have too much to do.
Yep.
So if you're eating at your desk or you're having a conference call that is not going well, you eating a meal while working is equivalent to you to trying to wash your clothes in the dryer. You're just not going to digest your food.
Or trying to eat a steak while running a marathon. Like your body's like under stress. It's just not going to do it. It
doesn't happen because you're not supposed to. Your body. You see, that's the thing about stress too. Your body still, the body can't differentiate a stressor as being charged by a tiger or you eating a meal because you're under duress because you're having a conference call with someone that you just can't stand.
Right.
You can't digest your food. Right. So your body the sympathetic and the parasympathetic response just kind of hit each other and clash.
Right.
So
well, we have covered a ton of ground in this podcast. We could go on for more because it's so much fun for me, but I do want to respect our audience's time. And I know, I don't want to add to the stress. So
you can always split it up and listen.
Split it up and pause and put me on and slow me down when I speed up with my conversation. But I do like to leave my audience with, one simple challenge or takeaway at the end of every episode to help them take like the very first steps in healing and preserving their brains. So, we talked about hormones today and we covered a lot of ground. What would you recommend as the one thing that they should do right now? Today?
What I said earlier, I think it is essential to balance your hormones for healthy lean mass, healthy body composition. Eat protein with every meal, not just 2 eggs. That's 14 grams of protein. You can combine those eggs with more protein. You get that 35, 45, and healthy fats. So ghee, maybe you make your eggs in ghee, right? Or butter.
Thanks for driving that one. Last time I talked about choosing healthy fats. So thanks for reminding them.
Good for the brain. If you have healthy fats, and I'm saying 1 to 2 tablespoons, 2 tablespoons with each meal, not one meal. We've demonized fat, protein and fat with every meal. You will not crave sugar.
You will not crave sugar.
Well, it's amazing. You will notice that your symptoms of PMS or hot flashes or insomnia or fatigue, brain fog, you're going to go, wait a minute. I feel sharper. So and I would also say too, if you're kind of challenged by this, work with a good health practitioner.
Yes, absolutely. It will change your life. It will change your life. Yeah.
Of course, Sandy and I are really good at what we do. So, but no, I really do mean it because there's a lot of information out there. But again, I hope I echo in your brain every single meal, protein, 35, 45 grams, and healthy fat. Your world will rock.
Yes, it will. Well, this was a great conversation and an important one. I can tell you that over the last few years, I have definitely seen an increase in the number of women seeking surgery when I'm doing my role in anesthesia for a hormone-related issue, whether it's PCOS, which is super common, or endometriosis, or infertility, or breast cancer, or nodules. There's absolutely no question that more and more women are dealing with hormone dysfunction and brain fog that related to it. Hormone imbalances can affect women's brains from childhood well into our old age. So addressing hormones is an important step in protecting your brain. Meg, thank you so much for joining us this episode as we began to peel back the layers on how we maintain our healthy brains and bodies. How can my audience find you if they have more questions?
Well, if you can include it in the show notes, but if they do want to find me, they can go to megrichichi.com.
Yep.
And
loads of information on there.
Tons of info on there. And and then you can find all my contact info and my podcast and all that.
Yeah. So absolutely.
I want to thank you. I want to thank you for what you're doing in helping women get clear on brain health. This is a very, very important issue that is overlooked.
Yep.
Thank you for doing this work.
Oh, thank you. I enjoy it. It's a definite passion project. And it's absolutely pushing outside of my comfort zone, but I love it. So guys, I absolutely recommend you reach out to Meg if you are dealing with stubborn hormone issues. Like I said, she is my go-to resource when I am working with complex issues that involve hormone imbalances. So in closing, I hope this episode has added a ton of value to your life, and I really look forward to talking to you guys again soon. Hey guys, this is Sandy. Thanks for spending the time with me the last 30 minutes or so and listening to me share what my experience is and some of the education out there. I hope it's been a blessing. I hope it's been encouraging. I hope it has empowered you to take the next best simple steps toward recovering good brain health. If you find this content helpful, please share this content. Thank you for being patient with me as I step outside of the clinical world and into the crazy podcasting world. I appreciate you guys hanging in there on the bloopers and everything along the way. But for sure, if this is helpful, pass it along to someone you think might benefit from the content. Leave me a like, leave me a share on your favorite podcaster that you're tuning in on, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Until then, there is hope for lasting healing.